Hey, what is going on? What in the world is going on? All right, so you found your way to the Motivation Mindset 365 podcast live on YouTube. I'm sorry, actually, this isn't live. It's not letting me do the YouTube live on my cell phone for some reason. I just tested it from my desktop, but the camera's not so good off my laptop, so I wanted to do it from my phone today so that you can actually see me, so I'm not like, it's not a weird angle and stuff like that. Hopefully this light from this source isn't too much. This is the window light. It's a pretty bright day today here in beautiful sunny Vancouver. Typically it's rainy Vancouver, but today decided to be sunny. So there you go. We live in it's not a tropical rainforest. It's a, what is it? It's a temperate rainforest. That's the region. So we're just above Seattle, Washington, about 2-hour drive. And so no, we don't live in igloos. We live in houses and apartments like this, right? So anyway, welcome to the show, you guys. Motivation Mindset 365. My name is James Christopher, and I'm your host. And I'm so grateful and appreciative that you're here and you're listening to this now. So this is our first YouTube of our Motivation Mindset. This is day number 37 of the 365-day podcast challenge that I challenged myself to. And this is actually episode A37. So, A36. So if you want to find us, we're on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Overcast, you name it. We're basically on, I think now all of them. All right, so feel free to check us out. My goal to you is to provide you with value every single day. And on top of that, we also have interviews that are going to be coming out now every second week, or twice a week. They're scheduled for Tuesdays and Fridays. All right, so we got one coming out tomorrow, and then Friday, and then so on and so forth from there. And then every day in between, we'll be having these daily solo podcasts for you and your enjoyment. So today we are in the middle, towards the end of the SAVERS protocol, the SAVERS system. So if you're not familiar with SAVERS, it's an acronym. It stands for silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing. So in case you're not sure what silence and scribing means, it's basically just another word. It's like a makeshift letter for the SAVERS acronym. Silence is for meditation and scribing is for journaling. Okay, and this comes from a book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And I highly encourage you to check out that book because it is so important to build some great habits into your life. And the morning is the best time to do those, especially when they're to develop yourself and grow yourself more. It's important to invest in yourself first. It's very similar to the financial principle where they, I believe, Dave Ramsey and Ramit Sethi. Dave Ramsey wrote the Total Money Makeover, and he wrote More Than Enough. And Ramit Sethi wrote the blog, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which he later turned into a book, which is, these are all fantastic books in the financial literacy category, as well as Robert Kiyosaki. These financial gurus, entrepreneurs, they all suggest that we should all be saving 10% of our income before we pay our bills, before we buy our groceries and luxury type goods or whatever, even potentially, if possible, before we pay our taxes. Now, obviously, if you don't have a business, that's going to be hard to do. Regardless, the point is you want to pay yourself first. And you should take that mindset and you should borrow it for this concept of the SAVERS system. So the first 10% of the day, so if we're awake for 16 hours a day, because 8 hours we sleep, or 7 hours, whatever your schedule is. If you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, might be 5 hours, right? If you're Chuck Norris, it's probably like, you don't actually sleep, or, somehow he like puts a chokehold on sleep, and, whatever Chuck Norris joke you can come up with about that. But, the first 10% of your day should be investing in you. And so SAVERS is a great way to do that, whether it's meditation, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, or scribing, okay? And so today is about reading. Today's the R. So if you want to learn about the other ones and what I've shared about those, check out the last 4 days. I think we started on A32, and today we're on A36. So I think that's 2, 3, 4. Today is day 5 of the protocol, program, whatever you want to call that there, okay? So reading. Why is it so important? Tony Robbins says that you can compress decades into days. Now, there are so many people. Will Smith has also said something similar where you can take an idea. I think Will Smith's book is, if you're ever having a problem with anything in your life, somebody has already written a book about it, okay? And you can take these ideas from these books that people have not only written about, but presumably these people are qualified, otherwise they probably wouldn't have written a book about it. And if, I mean, there are some bad books out there, so you do have to be careful and do some research. But what a day that we're living in, that not only have we, so it's, 2020, okay? And we have Amazon Prime shipping where you can get any book, essentially any book, within a day. Maybe 80% of all books, because some books is kind of, they might not be on the Prime shipping, but 80% of the books out there from people like Einstein, from Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, John Maxwell, leadership guru, Tony Robbins, motivation expert, Brene Brown, vulnerability coach and expert, Tim Ferriss, master interviewer, all these entrepreneurs and all these big names of people who have actually completed work, or Freud, or Homer's Iliad, 2,800 years old, right? Aldous Huxley, George Orwell. There's all this great history of human knowledge, and they're all recorded in books. And you can compress those decades of their life that they put into a single book that we can now read in several hours to build awareness, to build ideas, and create perception. And, essentially, I think it was Reading Rainbow. There's this old show, if you're familiar with Reading Rainbow, you're probably around my generation. Go sort of Gen X / millennial on the cusp there, right? So Reading Rainbow had that, I always think of that sometimes when I'm thinking about the power of reading, is you can go to a place that you have never been to or will potentially never go to. But by reading about it, you can experience it, right? And you can experience it in your mind. Your mind makes it real because if you remember the... was it affirmations and visualization, your mind doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. So when you're thinking about things that are outside of your own personal world, it just brings this whole wide vision of possibility, okay? And so I suggest for you to read. Now, if you don't want to improve your life, I don't know, what planet you're from, and that's all good, because honestly, there was a period in my life where I was just kind of going with the flow, and I was kind of like a piece of driftwood just floating down the river. I was like, I was like the yes man. I was like, nodding my head and smiling and okay, sure. And eventually one day I decided to take charge of my life. And it's funny because here's a little bit of my epiphany. So when I was, this is probably about 11, 12 years ago, I was like, oh gosh, like, maybe I should be reading some like self-help books. And I didn't really know much about that. I feel like I didn't really have much mentorship in my life. Or maybe what it was I had options for mentorship, but I just wasn't in a growth mindset. So even though I had people that I could glean from, I never actually pursued because I didn't have the mindset of being coachable. I didn't want to learn. I was kind of happy with the status quo, you could say. But still, I started kind of being aware of these self-help books and entrepreneurship and stuff. And so I got a hold of this book by Stephen Covey named the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I'd heard great things. And I was like, oh, okay, this is the book. Like, this is the one I got to read. And I picked it up. And I read the first page, and it took me like 20 minutes. And then I read the second page, and it took me like 30 minutes. And then I got like halfway down the third page, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is a waste of my time, right? Like, I'm just going to go to sleep. And so I basically never picked up that book again. I mean, I definitely tried. But what I realized looking back is I just never had the willingness to go through the struggle of learning how to read. One thing that I heard Jim Quick say, he's kind of like a speed reading / he's got his quick brain sort of thing. I think he just came out with a book called Limitless. It just came out. Haven't read that one yet. But he talks about how, once you get past like a third grade level of reading, like a basic level of comprehension and reading, we don't really actually learn how to have advanced reading skills. And so obviously there's a whole world of speed reading and things like that, and learning how to read, because this is really interesting actually. Your eyes can read faster than you can speak words. And most people get slowed down when they're reading through this concept called subvocalization. So you actually, under your breath, you're kind of reading along with your mouth with a subvocalization. It might be your mental mouth, like the mouth inside your brain, like you might be reading every word by word. But if you think about it, like sometimes you see a sign and you don't need to read every word, but you already know what it says, because your brain has the ability to read at a much faster pace than you can speak. Our speaking tempo is typically about 150 to 300 words a minute. And even with some simple training in a matter of a few days with the right speed reading course, you can learn how to read up to 800 words a minute and still comprehend at least 80% of the content. And when you start practicing that type of speed reading over and over and over again for several months or years, I mean, I heard of one guy learn, he can read a book in like 5 minutes, right? And apparently his comprehension is very good too. So I can't remember his name, but Russell Brunson talked about him on one of his videos. So if you want to know, search up, Google like fastest reader in the world, Russell Brunson interview or something like that. I'm sure it'll pop up. Regardless, so you can learn to develop a higher level of reading comprehension and speed. Through concepts called speed reading. Okay, now some people say, you know, even though you read faster, you might not be able to comprehend, but it can still get you the parts that are more important so that you can slow down to those parts. So there's different strategies and different schools of thought on that. Jim Quick, I know, is definitely teaches a lot about speed reading, and there's also this other program that I found and came across. It's called Iris Speed Reading. That was pretty good too, and so sometimes you can learn to read strategically. Okay. Now the moral of the story is learning to read more every morning consistently, right? Maybe taking 15 minutes, 30 minutes. If the average book has give or take 15 chapters in it, and let's just say you read a chapter a day, you can potentially finish 2 books a month quite easily. Okay, if you were reading like 30 to 45 minutes a day, depending on how long it takes you per chapter, right? So that said, when we read, I think the most important thing is to realize where we've come as a society and to be grateful for the fact that we have the ability to read, number one, and that we have access to reading. You know, I think about dystopian novels, like I already mentioned a couple, Fahrenheit 451 and George Orwell's 1984. The first Fahrenheit 451 is by Ray Bradbury. And these are those typical dystopian type novels where they actually, I guess it's the governments of the day, they actually go around burning books. You're not allowed to have books, right? And so we live in a free society where you can read all you want from all these people who've done incredible things with their life. So I want to share this concept with you. Now, there's still a lot of illiterate people around the world. I can't remember the latest numbers, but you know, I think at least 10% of the world's population is illiterate, if not more than that, okay? Now, let's say you have the ability to read. You learned how to read. Maybe it's at a very basic level, all good, but you know how, okay? Now, what sets you apart from somebody who doesn't even know how to read if you don't practice reading? Right? So you've got the ability to read, but you don't practice it. More or less, you don't practice it on a daily basis, something like that. If somebody doesn't even know how to read, and you know how, but you don't practice it, if you don't exercise your ability to read, then what really sets you apart? Okay? So reading is something, I mean, we know how important it is to be able to read because you get so many different ideas and concepts from other people, right? It's a very powerful habit to be in the practice of. So, if you know how to read and you're not reading, check yourself. You know, why not? Now, I'm not saying you need to read self-development, self-help type books, but find something that you're interested in. Maybe it's something around your hobby. Maybe you're like gardening. Grab a gardening encyclopedia. You can learn some things there and develop some ideas and hopefully get better in the gardening practice. Or jiu-jitsu, right? Maybe you don't like to garden. Maybe you want to get better at jiu-jitsu, and so you can find, I'm sure, a book from somebody like, I don't know if Joe Rogan's written a book about jiu-jitsu. I know he practices it, but maybe there's somebody like Gracie Barra. Maybe they wrote a book or something like that, and you can learn more about that. So regardless, I don't like, obviously I wish that you would learn and read more regularly than you do now, because even if you are already reading 30, 45 minutes a day, why not an hour? Why not 2 hours a day, right? I think Warren Buffett, he reads 6 newspapers before 8 a.m. or something like that, or while he's having his morning coffee. And I think Bill Gates is a very avid reader too. And these are 2 of the wealthiest individuals in the world. You think there's a correlation with that? I think so, right? So I'm not saying that maybe I don't want to assume that you want to be successful, but if you if you don't want to be successful, then why are you listening to this podcast? This is called Motivation Mindset 365. Okay, so anyway, I'm sure you do want to get better. I know Tony Robbins talks about the two spiritual needs that we've all got as human beings is to grow and to give, right? Growing and contribution. And if you want to learn more about those, you can check out Tony Robbins' 6 essential needs. There's 4 more. I won't get into those right now, but you can look them up pretty easily. And growing, man, growing. It's hard to grow, it's hard to give if you don't have something to give, right? So coming back to that idea, save 10%. Well, if you're saving 10% of your income, you can potentially give money away because now you've got money to give. But if you didn't save it, how would you have it? You can't give what you don't have, right? Same thing if you have a whole bunch of love for yourself, then you can give love to other people too. But if you don't love yourself, if you don't believe in yourself, you can't believe in other people. If you can't give what you don't have, right? So having that knowledge from reading also gives you the opportunity to share that knowledge with other people and help other people along the path too, because we're all on the path, right? This is our life. So that's what I wanted to share about reading. Tomorrow we'll share a little bit about scribing, and really excited to share that stuff with you, journaling, aka. And so this is our first YouTube on the topic. So I was gonna do the live, but I couldn't do it for my phone. Also recording the podcast at the same time on my microphone here, so I hope the quality was okay. I think I forgot to check that one, but I actually checked it earlier, so it should be good. And so anyway, guys, that's what I've got for you today. Thank you again so much for listening. If you could hit that subscribe button down below, definitely want to be able to provide lots of value, and the more subscribers and likes that we have, the more we're going to know what's working and what's good, and we'll keep providing awesome content like that. And if we don't get those, we'll have to side shift a little bit and re-strategize our approach to things. So hit that subscribe button, please. Please follow us, if you will, on Instagram. You can follow us at motivationmindset.365. And if you would also be part of the 1%, we found about 1% of the people actually leave a review. So if you could please be part of that 1%, leave a review on whatever podcast platform that you're listening to this on. I can't follow them all. So if you can leave that review and then screenshot it for me and either send it to me on my Instagram, or you can just post it on your Instagram and tag us. That would be awesome too. And then that way we can do a shout out. Would love to shout you out on the show, and hopefully kind of share some likes and followers and different things like that. And just kind of really looking to grow this. So thanks so much again for being a part of this, and so good having you here, and looking forward to the next one. All right, take care, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.